On May 29, 2026, the former Attorney General of the United States sat before the House Oversight Committee for nearly 4 hours. She was under subpoena. She was accompanied by a senior Department of Justice lawyer. And she was asked, repeatedly, one simple question in every possible form. What did Donald Trump know about Jeffrey Epstein? She did not answer. Not once. Not on a single variation of the question. Not when they asked if Trump directed her to take action on the Epstein files. Not when they asked what Trump said when she told him his name appeared multiple times in those files. Not when they asked if Trump ever told her he had friends who could be exposed by the files being released. Every single time, her answer was the same. I'm not going to discuss any conversation I have had or have not had with the President of the United States. Today, June 5, 2026, the full 111-page transcript of that interview was released. And what it reveals is not just a refusal to answer. It is a documented, systematic, and carefully engineered cover of something the American public has a legal right to know. This is hidden agenda, and this is what 111 pages of silence looks like. To understand what happened in that hearing room, you need to understand how we got there. In 2024, Donald Trump made a campaign promise. He would release the Epstein files. It was a popular promise. Jeffrey Epstein's network of powerful men who abused young women had captivated the public for years. The files, millions of pages of FBI records, DOJ investigations, court documents, represented the most comprehensive accounting of that network ever assembled by the United States government. When Trump won, Pam Bondi was appointed Attorney General, and in the months that followed, the DOJ released some files. But not all of them. Not even close. Congressional Democrats and some Republicans began demanding the complete release. A bipartisan Epstein Files Transparency Act was passed, legally requiring the full release. Still, roughly half the 6 million covered documents remained unreleased. Then in May 2025, reports emerged that Bondi had personally told Trump that his name appeared multiple times in the Epstein files, and that the DOJ did not plan to release any more of them. 2 months later, the DOJ issued a memo saying no further release would be warranted. The House Oversight Committee issued a subpoena. Bondi refused to comply for months. When she finally appeared on May 29th, she did not come under oath, there was no video camera, and she brought with her Harmeet Dillon, the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, to run interference on every question that came close to the truth. The transcript is 111 pages. It documents 4 hours of testimony. And the pattern it reveals is not complicated. On every question that touched Donald Trump, his knowledge of Epstein, his role in the files decision, his reaction when told his name was in the files, Bondi gave one of 3 responses. Response 1, I'm not going to discuss any conversation I have had or have not had with the President of the United States. Response 2, I don't recall. Response 3, Harmeet Dillon intervened and said the question was beyond the scope of the interview or covered by executive privilege. Here is what that looks like in practice. When asked whether Trump directed her or any DOJ subordinates to take action related to the Epstein files, privilege. When asked what Trump said when she told him his name appeared in the files, I'm not going to discuss any conversation with the President. When asked if Trump ever told her he had friends who could be exposed by the files, I won't discuss any conversation with the President. When asked if she ordered her staff to search for Trump's name specifically in the files in order to segregate and destroy those documents, I don't recall. When asked who the 10 co-conspirators named in a 2019 FBI email were, the names are redacted, Congress wants them revealed, Dillon intervened. Then Bondi said she did not recall reviewing the document. When asked about Ghislaine Maxwell being transferred to a less secure facility, a move that was covered extensively in the news, I have no knowledge of that. The pattern is total, systematic, and deliberate. Every question that could implicate Trump in the decision to withhold files was met with either a claim of executive privilege or a claim of no memory so selective it defies credibility. Here is the element of this hearing that most coverage has underplayed. Harmeet Dillon's presence in that room was unprecedented. Dillon is the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. She is an active member of the Department of Justice. She is not Bondi's personal lawyer. She is not a congressional liaison. She was there, as she stated herself, to represent the interests of the DOJ. And what she did in that room, on behalf of those DOJ interests, was systematically block every question that approached the truth about Trump's role in the Epstein files. When Democrats asked questions she didn't like, she told them they were not going to get answers. She told them the scope of the interview had been limited to questions only about Bondi's time as Attorney General, and that anything before February 2025 was off limits. Democrats said they never agreed to that limitation. Dillon said it didn't matter. She said the interview was voluntary, and she didn't have to justify the objections. Think about what that means. A sitting DOJ official, using government authority, attended a congressional interview specifically to prevent Congress from getting answers about the president's role in withholding documents Congress had passed a law requiring to be released. This is not a legal gray area. The Epstein Files Transparency Act is a law. Congress passed it. It requires disclosure. The DOJ under Bondi did not fully comply with it. And when Congress tried to find out why, tried to ask the person who ran the DOJ what the president had to do with that non-compliance, a sitting DOJ official shut the questioning down. That is institutional obstruction dressed in legal clothing. Now here is where the story gets even more significant. Throughout the 111-page transcript, Bondi repeatedly pointed to one person as the person responsible for the Epstein files decisions, Todd Blanche. She said Blanche was leading the Epstein matter and the release of everything from the beginning. She said she delegated oversight of the process to Blanche. She distanced herself from every controversial decision by directing questions about those decisions to Blanche. But here is what makes that significant beyond the hearing room. Todd Blanche is now the acting Attorney General of the United States, and Donald Trump has announced plans to nominate him permanently. If Blanche is confirmed as permanent Attorney General, the man Bondi just pointed to as the person responsible for the Epstein files decisions will be running the entire Department of Justice, including any future investigation into what happened to those files. Democrats on the committee made this point explicitly. If Bondi says Blanche was in charge, then Blanche needs to testify. Blanche needs to answer the questions Bondi refused to answer. He needs to explain why 3.2 million pages of Epstein documents were not released when the DOJ issued its memo saying no further release was warranted. He needs to explain whether Trump directed him to make decisions about what to release and what to withhold. And the confirmation hearings for Blanche as permanent Attorney General now become the arena where those questions will be asked. If he refuses to answer them there, under oath, on camera, in public, the obstruction is complete. From Bondi to Blanche to the Oval Office, a chain of silence that the transcript of May 29th has now documented in 111 pages of permanent record. Let us be precise about what the transcript actually confirms, because this is hidden agenda, and we do not overstate. What is confirmed? Trump's name appears multiple times in the Epstein files. Bondi personally informed Trump of this in May 2025. 2 months later, the DOJ issued a memo saying no further files would be released. Bondi refused under subpoena to answer whether Trump directed her or anyone at the DOJ to take action related to the files. Bondi refused to answer what Trump said when she told him his name was in the files. Bondi delegated the entire Epstein release process to Todd Blanche, who is now acting Attorney General and Trump's nominee for permanent AG. The DOJ was unaware that 3.2 million pages of Epstein documents existed when it issued its July 2025 memo saying no further release was warranted. Bondi said she did not recall whether her staff searched specifically for Trump's name in the files to flag those documents for removal. What is not confirmed: whether Trump personally directed Bondi to withhold files, whether the files containing Trump's name were deliberately destroyed, and whether Blanche took specific action to protect Trump. Those questions remain unanswered because Bondi refused to answer them, and that refusal, documented across 111 pages of official congressional record, is itself the story, not what Bondi said. What she refused to say. 111 pages. Nearly 4 hours. A former Attorney General. A sitting DOJ official running interference. And not a single answer about what Donald Trump knew, what he said, or what he directed. The Epstein Files Transparency Act was passed because Congress, in a bipartisan vote, determined that the American public had a right to know what was in those files. Bondi's testimony documents that the person who ran the DOJ during the period when compliance with that law was most critical refused on the record, under subpoena, in front of Congress, to say what the president had to do with any of it. Today the transcript is public. Tomorrow Blanche faces a confirmation hearing. The questions Bondi refused to answer do not disappear because she refused to answer them. They transfer to Blanche, to the confirmation process. To every senator who will have to vote on whether to make the man who ran the Epstein files process the permanent head of the Department of Justice. Subscribe to Hidden Agenda, because the next chapter of this story is already scheduled, and it happens under oath.